everybody. 6 o'clock, this is the joint Board of Selectmen Board of Finance meeting. On budget presentations, I've been asked to announce that it is not Channel 79 again tonight, rather it is live streaming on YouTube. So hope you catch us there, and we're going to start tonight with the audit. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening. For the record, I'm Scott Bassett. I'm a partner with RSM, and the firm conducted the audit for the town of Woodbridge this year. And tonight I'm just going to give you a summary of the results. I've been doing this a long time here at the town of Woodbridge, and like every other year, things went very smoothly. Tony and his staff and folks who were the Board of Ed worked very hard to bring the financial statement together. And I always open up these comments with that there were no audit adjustments as we go through the process, and what that really means is the information that you receive on your monthly basis is up to date and accurate, and that's not the norm. So with no audit adjustments, so just so you know, so they do a really good job, and I'm sure you know that. So what I'll do is go through some of our required communications, touch on a couple of financial statement highlights. I'm sure Tony can jump in if he has to, but so if you're ready to go, we get Tony provided some handouts for you.
Yeah.
Let's go through those. Okay, our job as we come in as your independent auditors is to look at the financial statements and give an opinion on those. And to give our opinion, pretty much says that the financial statements are according to generally accepted accounting principles, and we conducted our audit under government auditing standards and U.S. auditing standards. And then we give an opinion on that the financial statements are materially correct. And we rendered an unmodified and clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the big booklet. And then also, the town received some state and federal funding, and we had to go through some program testing on those. And again, the town received clean and modified opinions on those financial statements. My required communications to you as the audit committee, the Board of Finance acting as the audit committee. We talked about significant accounting policies. There was no changes in your significant accounting policies from 2022. There was a new audit standard, or excuse me, accounting standard that was adopted this year for subscription-based IT type software. It didn't have a material impact on the financial statements, but Tony and his staff had to go through contracts and agreements to be in compliance to that standard. So we were able to handle that. Embedded in the financial statements, as you can imagine, are assumptions, right? Especially with pension plans and OPEB plans. And those are your biggest assumptions that impact the numbers of the financial statements. Discount rates, mortality rates, and things like that drive those type of numbers. We didn't encounter any difficulties as we proceeded through the audit. We had no disagreements with management. And as I said, talked about your financial statements, there were no uncorrected items that we noted as we went through the financial statements. We did have one finding this year, and it really had to do with you did receive some ARPA money, and with that, there's a procurement policy with that, and the town did have a policy regarding suspension and debarment. Just that we looked at the paper, we couldn't see that it was done. So there was 2 vendors that we took a look at, and they were perfectly fine. But just when we looked at the documentation, we couldn't see, check the box, and say, oh, they went through SAN and went through that process. So not a big deal, not uncommon, but I'm sure it's just a matter of putting a little bit on your purchase order as you go through the process that you did. At the end of the audit, we get a representation letter from management, which states that they pretty much have given us everything that we've asked for. There is no unrecorded liabilities or things of that nature that they didn't tell us about. And then one of the last things we talk about is the responsibilities of independence. RSM, as your auditor, has to be independent from the town, and the folks at the town have to be independent from RSM, and we both share that responsibility, and we communicate that to you at the beginning of the audit, at the end of the audit. Independence is really what makes an audit, because we come in, it's not black and white, we have open eyes, and we just kind of call them under those principles that we talked about earlier in the presentation. The responsibilities of management on page 4 now, responsibility of management basically are the financial statements. What a big booklet that you see here, other than a few pages in here our responsibility is management. My responsibility, or the auditor's responsibility is to give an opinion on those financial statements. So that's what we do, and that's what the town does. We talked about the opinions rendered again, just to be clear, the clean, unmodified opinions on the financial statements for the year. My glasses on for this part. On the government-wide basis, and these are numbers that you won't see on a monthly basis. Tony won't report on these on a monthly basis, but basically it's government-wide. We bring in all the long-term assets, all the long-term liabilities, and measure the financial condition of the town at the end of the year. The town had a net position of $56.4 million, and a small decrease from the previous year. So you pretty much had a break even from the full accrual basis of the county in the current year. The general fund, which is your operating fund, the fund that, as you know, you adopt budgets for it and manage throughout the year, had an undefined balance was about $8 million. My total fund balance was 9.7. As a measure of the general fund's liquidity, it may be useful to compare total fund balance to total fund expenditures, and that's at 14.2%. It's still at a good margin. And the OPEB trust fund, and that's obviously that's the monies where you have investments where it's driven by market value as of June 30 each year, had an increase of $600,000 to 6.3 million as of June 30, 2023. Turning to page 6, we talked about a lot of these items and tried to, if you want to take this with you, and as you read through the booklet and see what page references are, you can do that. But I like note 6, the long-term liabilities. I think that's always one to take a look at. Bonded debt increased by $1.8 million. The net pension liability increased by $7.6 million, and the OPEB liability decreased by a couple $100,000. Now, you see that increase of $7.6 million in the net pension liability. That's really driven by discount rates, it's driven by mortality rates, and by market value as of June 30th. So that's what drives that. I think that standard has been placed about 7 or 8 years now, and it goes up and down when you look at those numbers just based on the economy and based on how things are driven. When actuaries take a look at the pension data, they'll smooth things out for you and kind of see in the middle of the road what's happening. But remember, we audit at a point in time based on what the market value is as of June 30th, where the actuaries are taking gains and losses and smoothing those over for 5 years.
Excuse me, the fact that it's doubled almost, is that of any concern?
It all depends on what changed in the assumption, right? And that's, if they drop the rate of return, up goes your liability. Okay, so, and that's probably, if you think about where we were in the market the last few years, what happened with interest rates and rate of returns, that's going to drive it, so.
There's a comment on that, is that we're part of CMERS.
Yeah.
So, which is the state municipal employees retirement plan, so we don't have much control over that.
Exactly, yeah.
But
Just
any control.
so just so you know, what we do with, I'm not an actuary, but what we do as a firm is if we get the actuary report, we'll send it to our internal actuaries, and they'll look at the assumptions and things being used to make sure that they're in line with what the expectations are. Most towns and cities now follow the same mortality tables. About 5 years ago, they came out with mortality tables specific to the public sector, right, and teachers and things. So basically all governments follow that as they report on it within their financial report. But the big one is the rate of return, right, and that's the one that gets modified and looked at up and down as things go. So
just out of curiosity, what is that rate of return that they're using?
6.5%.
6.5%, and so it's probably, I think with Tony and I were doing this years ago, it was probably 8.5% or 9%. Right. And that's a big number. And then there were, I talked about a little bit of the footnotes. The pension plan footnotes are very long, but if you look at some of the required supplementary information, that kind of sums it up for you with the actuarial assumptions and things. But nothing significant in the financial statement notes this year. The revenues exceeded budget by $724,000, the actual expenditures are under budget by $566,000 in the current year. So you watch your budget, those numbers aren't a surprise to you as you go through the process. Federal awards this year, you spent $1.3 million, and that money was the COVID money. A lot of it was 21027 COVID money. And the state money stayed pretty consistent. And, that's it. We do take a look at internal controls, although we don't give an opinion on internal controls. We certainly take a look at those as we process through the audit. And we didn't have any findings or significant deficiencies or weaknesses noted in your internal controls.
So I just want to correct that.
Yeah.
Because 6.5% was the OPEB
Okay.
return, and 6.9%.
Yeah. So, that's my report. And hopefully, I've referenced you, if you go back to the big booklet, you can go through it. But again, I don't think there's any surprises this year. Every year we get here, there's another standard that has to be adopted by the town. And I think the booklet gets bigger and bigger. So anyway, nice job, and I certainly can answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions? If not, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and have a nice evening. I appreciate it.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you.
So it's good.
Okay, thank you again.
Okay, have a nice evening.
We're gonna start with the capital presentation from the Thomas Darling House.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Lots of new faces. I am Alexi Beltran. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm president of the Historical Society. And I'm thinking with lots of new faces that maybe I should spend some 5 minutes just to get everybody on the same page of what we're asking for and what we've done in the past. And one other thing, and it would be great if the town might want to do this too in their record. We were encouraged, as a lot of other historical societies, to have the name of the museum be more inclusive, because lots of people live there besides Thomas Darling. So we have actually officially changed the name to Darling Farmstead and History Museum. So, I don't know, that might screw up I realize what's in your records, but just, we are officially referring to it as the Thomas Darling House.
What is it, Darling?
Darling Farmstead and History Museum.
And effective when did you change the name?
We officially made the change in the fall when we had the signs made, and we got a grant last year to update the National Register listing, and that is still in process, but it will be listed as that to the National Register.
Okay.
And most of the update for the National Register is actually a lot about the history of the people, because a lot of National Register listings, and this one was done in the 1970s.
So it's not official yet, that's my question.
No, the name is official.
It's official,
It
okay.
is official, yeah, I just don't know that I realize that, we started using it and we put it on the signs, that was another grant project, but that, I don't know that now that I'm saying this, we probably should make some sort of official statement about that.
Okay, all right, so go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah. What's in the request this year is the roofs and also work for the horse barn and carriage house. And that's what you see that is on the same side as the house, and you can see the arch opening for the carriage house, and it's the barn that's behind it, that's the horse barn. What is called the ice house is on the west side and west of the large cow barn that you see. So those are the two structures we're talking about. So what the Historical Society did in 2021 was to write a grant to get an engineering survey done of those three structures. So we would all know what what they needed. And we found out we needed emergency work, which we did, to just stabilize the ice house. That was done in late 2021. And then of the three buildings, the building that needed the most urgent work, but wasn't an emergency, was the cow barn. So I think, as you know, we had written a matching grant for that from the state, and in prior town budgets, there were, part of the funds to complete that project, the Historical Society made up of about a $40,000 shortfall, ourselves with that. But that project is complete. And Tony, Aaron has everything, and hopefully, because you have to pay up front and then get reimbursed, and so the town will be getting money back that was paid up front to the contractor. So I know some of you have actually been there. We are doing a grand reveal for that, put this on your calendars, April 27th. And we'll also be revealing, I don't know if anybody's been there to see the signs that we have now that are near the parking lot that explain the history of the property and then the museum. So that's helpful because a lot of people who go to the house, or they go for the walks on the trails and they don't know anything about the museum. So the cow barn project was a success. And should be good for decades. The one thing that wasn't done there, though, is the roof. And we were hoping we had a few more years, but when the contractors were there, they noted that there are starting to be some small roofs in that, leaks in the cow barn roof. So one of the requests is to have that roof replaced, especially since we've done all this work. We don't want all that work that we've all paid for to get damaged. So that's one request. The other request is actually one we made last year that was not approved, and that is to do the roof on what is termed the middle barn. So again, if you have the house and the caretaker wing, then there is a barn that has big sliding doors before that open carriage shed. That is what's termed the middle barn. That roof has been leaking now for 2 years. It is a storage barn, but if that continues to go on, obviously the water infiltration into the roof is going to damage the structure, and then what's going to be required to fix that is going to be more than simply replacing the roof itself. So there are those 2 roofs for this year, and then the big item is a matching portion of another historic restoration fund grant, which would be similar to the one we had for the cow barn. When we did this last time, we wrote the grant first and then came and asked for matching funds. And the board of selectmen at the time said, next time, please ask for the funds first before you write the grant. So that's what we're doing. And the grant funding agency is the State Historic Preservation Office of Connecticut. Their process has gotten more complicated and more competitive. And what they are requiring is that funds are available. All the matching funds are available before you even write the grant. So the process is that we will have to write a letter of intent in March to say we want to write this grant. And then they will let us know if they accept that letter in May, and then we can start the grant writing process. Actually, the grants, they don't review the grants until the fall, and the funds become available in January of 2025.
Okay, so whatever the cycle is, this is just the first step in that cycle that you're following, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Right.
Any questions? I mean, I gather we're gonna be hearing more about this, is what it sounds like, over the next several
Right.
months. Okay.
I'm just, and I know the town still has to approve the budget in May, but if this doesn't end up in the budget, we can't write a grant this
Right.
year, because they won't accept that, and then they only review them once a year, so it would delay doing anything, any of that work.
And is there a fundraising component to any of this?
Well, we are doing many other things at the house that we are funding ourselves. So we are asking, the town, we'll write the grant, which gets half of the funds. So, that's a lot of money. But another thing that we're exhausted, by the way. You see what we've done. The Good to Great project. So those of you who've been around long enough may have heard about the Good to Great. It was a grant we wrote in 2019. The work is complete except for the paperwork. So we now have an accessible bathroom on the first floor for visitors. We have a kitchen workspace, so when we do our hearth cooking events, school kids, whatever. And that was grant, but we funded that this year. Beyond this work, we are funding replastering upstairs that got damaged by the ice dam quite a few years ago. We are writing a grant to help fund the chimney because it will cost more than what's in the town budget right now. And then also some stabilization work in the basement. So we are doing a bunch of other things that we are not asking for, but,
Okay. Any questions?
Actually, I just want to be sure that I'm clear on that. So can you just repeat specifically what grant for what purpose is required so that in order for you to receive matching funds?
So, it's called a Historic Restoration Fund Grant.
Mhm.
It's a 50-1-to-1 matching grant. And what's requested in here that's listed under, the ice house and
Yeah,
horse
that's what I'm
barn,
saying.
it would be, we're asking for the money to be to do that project. It would match for the grant. And they are asked, their requirements are that the money is in hand before you write the grant. And it would help us if we had, if it was in the budget, obviously, when we write the letter and send it in March.
Is the full amount, the 133.3, is that
Yes.
what's required
Yes,
in order for that?
yes.
Any other thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, the Darling Farmstead and History Museum is under the Amity Woodbridge Historic Society's purview, owned by the town, under the purview. Why is it, do we, or does the Amity Woodbridge Historic Society own, manage other buildings, or is it just the Darling kind of farmstead? And why Amity Woodbridge? Are Bethany and Orange involved, and do they contribute financially? Do the services? How do you understand
So
that?
we only manage, the buildings there at the farmstead, so with the
Okay.
lease, so the house and all of the outbuildings, that there's nothing else in town that we manage. Orange has their own historical society and their own buildings that the town owns that they manage. Bethany has their own historical society buildings that they own, that the town just gave them over $100,000 for their own buildings that are part of their historical society. So each town has its own historical society that has their own buildings, whether they own them or the town owns them, is different. But, so, for us, for Woodbridge, they would not be involved, we are not involved in theirs.
So why are we called the Amity Woodbridge Historic Society?
So
We
that's.
have to go back to 1799. I actually think it is just sort of an accident.
Well, in 1936 or 38, the historical society existed, but the museum didn't exist.
Okay.
And they named it that because originally this wasn't Woodbridge, it was the parish of Amity. And then, and Amity was Woodbridge and Bethany, and then they split after. So when they created the historical society, they wanted to
It
reflect
has
that.
nothing to do with the high school. Okay, that's what I'm talking
Didn't
about.
think that, I just
No.
wasn't sure if there
But
was
actually, I will
other
say,
municipalities involved
at
in
the
the
time,
operation.
Bethany was involved, but then Bethany decided, and I don't know when, to form their own historical society. And this organization, once you have a 501c3, changing the name of that is complicated, so we have never done that.
Thank you for that.
Mika.
Last time, just wanted to quickly make you aware that there is also an event on the April 27th for Earth Day, which is being planned and is supposed to be a rather significant event. So it might help.
That was not on your calendar last week when we checked.
It might-
Lynn actually checked the calendar. She said there's nothing in the town that day.
This is being planned as we speak between the library and the Sustainability Commission.
Okay.
So, but it may offer, depending on timing, it may offer an opportunity because I know they were extending that to other areas. So just wanted to make mention of that since you mentioned the date.
So it might actually be a good thing because
Could be
we find
depending on-
something.
Yes,
Okay.
it could be depending on time.
Okay.
Good point, good point. Anything else on capital? Looks like your operating budget is in the negative.
She's really just doing the
Yeah,
capital,
the
I can
capital.
take care of that.
Yeah, okay, all right, so, good. Any other thoughts? Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Oh, you did say, that you were gonna cover the operations, okay. Okay, next is, you want to do board finance?
So next is,
You want to do board finance, or do you want to do the operation on Thomas Darwin?
yeah, just do the operation.
Okay.
I'll start.
And that's at 1540,
Then we'll do finance.
okay.
So basically, the operations for the Thomas Darling House are the utilities, essentially, that we fund as a town, and then the Historical Society reimburses us for those charges. So it's essentially a wash, because we require the expenditures, and then we were able to get municipal pricing and financing for a lot of these, and then they just reimburse us for that.
Okay.
That's what that is.
All right. I assume there's no questions on that. The board finance,
So that's the finance department.
I mean, finance.
Finance department is for salary, mainly the salaries related to the finance department. It includes, and it also includes our banking charges. We probably won't spend nearly that much because as interest rates go up, although they're not great, we earn interest on the float of the money that we're using as we fund, payables and checks and such. So, this was budget, they might be able to adjust this budget. We're still sort of reviewing that as we go through the process. But it's essentially required to operate finance department.
Any questions for Tony on the finance department?
Transfer from,
And there is, thank you for that. There is some reorganization that we did last year, and so you'll see there's a negative for regular assistance and clerical, and some of those charges were transferred to the selectmen's budget. So you'll see a salary line in the selectmen's budget that's actually up significantly, but it's really a lot of the charges were just reorganized based on use, based on the salaries and the time spent in each department.
Okay.
Okay, it's sort of split, some of
Yeah.
them are split.
Okay,
Okay.
and that sounds like a good segue to board of selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen has one capital request. Time one. And because we have the chairman of the chamber here, I think I'll let Dwight speak on this.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief synopsis. The building committee was formed about 2 years ago. We were charged with the look at renovating the existing center building, which was built in 1929. So it's about 100 years old. It's antiquated, mechanical, electrical, all the systems in there are totally antiquated. And the primary focus was to look at PD, modernizing PD, given the space that they really need, because their really need is pretty, they haven't really updated much at all. And also human services, as well as the building itself. So we retain the services of an architect, SP plus A. We've been working with them for the past year and a half, I guess, I would say. They've been very helpful. We split the project up into 5 phases. Phase 1 was just to have the architect go through, look at the building, make recommendations on what they saw, what had to be done, exterior, the envelope, which was the brick, the windows, the roofing, the flashings, everything on the building exterior, and also on the building interior, looking at finishes. ADA compliance is a huge thing now, because anytime you update a building, you have to bring it up to code, all the updated codes, and also the mechanical and the electrical systems. What has to be done, what has to be upgraded. We're getting towards the end of phase 1 right now, and the estimate that's in here, the 41 million, 41 million is a 30,000 foot snapshot of where it is. We haven't gotten into the nitty gritty yet of the estimate. The architect's currently working on that. We hope to have it within the next 3 to 4 weeks of a better fit for that number right now. But there is, we will be renovating a lot of that building. Essentially, PD is not only gonna stay where they are, they're gonna move up into the second floor of the center building. And they're gonna take a lot of that space up there. That's where they're gonna move their admin office and everything else up there. We're looking at putting a handicap ramp to the main entrance, to the main entrance door over here, because that's required for ADA. Brand new elevator's gonna have to go in. There's a lot of upgrades and all that we'll be doing, but we'll be back with, when we believe we have a good estimate, we have a phasing plan. There's gonna be a lot of phases to this. It's gonna be about 3 or 4 phases where we're gonna be moving into a space. We have to then move maybe human services or PD somewhere, get them set up as we renovate the new space. And then we gotta move them back, and then we gotta renovate the space and maybe move somebody else. So it's like a chess set, as we do it. I did this in my past life, so it's pretty, it's really involved, especially in an older building like that. So it'd be great if we could add on to it, but we're sort of, we're shackled by the thing is, we have a building square foot, we have to work within that, so we're trying to work with all the departments. The architect's been sitting with all the departments, they've been meeting with PD, they've been meeting with human services, get their needs, get their requirements, what they need and everything else, so. And this will all come out at the end of phase 1. And then we'll come back to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance at the end of phase 1, so then, if we get authorization, we're not spending any money, but we can then move to phase 2, which is more of a detail of where everything's gonna, start actually doing the design and start working on that, so.
Okay, with the understanding that we're not gonna ask Dwight to revisit 2 years' worth of meetings. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll just make a
Meetings
comment.
are online, all our,
I just
all
wanted
our
to-
minutes are
I
online,
see.
so.
I don't wanna get
comment.
too through.
I just want to make a comment. So, phase 2 that Dwight is talking about, in terms of moving forward to phase 2, is the other capital budget request in this department for $145,900.
Wait, say that again?
There's a second budget request, capital budget request in the Board of
Oh,
Selectmen
here,
for $145,000.
Yeah.
That's phase 2 that Dwight is talking about going to phase 2 in your.
There's gonna be another piece to that is.
It's part of phase 2, right?
Well, we have 5 phases. Phase 1 is what we're gonna wrap up now. Phase 2 is if we get the authorization from the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, then we can proceed, and the architect can then start getting into the nitty-gritty, into the details, start doing actual drawings, and fine-tuning the estimate. What our committee would probably do is recommend going out and, retain the services of a construction manager. Construction manager, because right now, with all the phases, we're gonna be hopscotching around. He's gonna be very important, that CM will be very important to actually help not only with the scheduling, but with estimating, and also the phasing aspect of it. So.
I'm assuming you're going to be applying for grants as time goes on at some point, because I'm sure they're out there, and that'll be a big part of this.
And presumably this is borrowed money. If we
Correct.
ever get to
Yeah,
that
it's gonna
point,
have
we
to-
bond it.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, okay. I don't even wanna think about how old I'm gonna be by the time this is done. I'm gonna
I understand,
go-
but
Yeah, no, I understand.
this is just, we've done a lot of work trying to get where we are today and everything else, and it's not gonna stop. We got a meeting next week, we meet every month, and everything else, we get updates, so.
Last year they named, the town named me a living treasure, by the time it's done, I'm gonna be a living relic. Okay, excellent, yeah.
Has there been any revenue generating component to the planning of that? In other words, like putting cell tower on site, leveraging like what Milford does. And they've got the shortwave radio for the police, fire and EMS, and then they've got a cell tower that they lease out to tenants on the same property. I don't know if that's possible here, but has there been any kind of
No.
ideating
No,
about
we
that
haven't,
kind
we
of
haven't
stuff?
really discussed that. Our big thing right now is just trying to take all the needs of all the departments, PD, human services, and trying to shoehorn them into this building, trying to make it all work, so.
Good suggestion, though.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah.
So the other thing I would like to just say, as you're going on with these different groups, please, I'd like to, when you're presenting it to the Board of Selectmen, make sure there's also a value proposition associated with it that very explicitly explains the value that the town gets for what we're doing.
Sure.
Based on the amount,
Sure.
it's something that should be included. Appreciate it.
Can I ask just a question about, in the context of the operating and the capital budget for this coming year, the 145.9 for planning gets you into phase 2. So you mentioned coming to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance for the next set of approvals. Is it in the context of this budget, we would approve it as we approve the budget and that's the approval? Or is there a separate set of approvals that you're gonna come to us with?
No, because the contract was already approved for
We
pending funding.
we already have a contract with the
Right.
architect, and we have phase 1, we have phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So when we,
We have-
presumably when we approve this number in the budget, then you
Then
know
you
the
start.
approvals.
Correct,
Okay.
that's correct.
The other thing, what's not included is the cost of the CM,
Right.
the cost of the pre-construction, because
And that's
once
what
we
we
complete
request.
phase 1, our thing is, we really need to get another expert in, like a construction manager, to start looking at, working with the architect on the phasing and any estimating and what we can afford, what we can't afford, start looking at items like that.
Is the cost of that also a capital request or an operating request, or it's gonna come in?
That would probably be a capital.
Well,
item.
generally,
Well, I don't-
professional services associated with a large capital project are generally considered capital requests.
But this is also duplicative of the housekeeping dollars that human services asked for, just to be able to occupy the space while this is all being phased in. Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? Andrea, I can tell you have a thought.
I have a quick question. So,
Oh, sorry, that one.
construction manager, that person independent of the construction group? Is there a way of?
What a construction manager does, if any of you remembers what we did at the new firehouse, I was chair of that committee. We went out because it was one of the larger projects we had done. And we went out, first of all, selected an architect, and then we went out for CM services, went out, solicited proposals, and then we picked, okay, new field construction. We interviewed them, they came in, they had a lower fee, they had a good background and all that. And then what they do is then you bring them in, and then they work hand in hand with the architect as they develop the drawings. As, we didn't really have a lot of phasing there, but the CM will be extremely valuable in the center building because of all the movement and everything else we have to do, within to keep everybody operational, but also do the construction work at the same time. So, and they will, and when you bring a CM on board, what it is that you get a cost first for all the upfront work, all the pre-construction and everything else. And then if we opt to go to construction, if we get an authorization to go to construction, then we will enter into a separate contract with them, for their construction management, the services and everything else.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But we're not locked in if we
Yeah.
don't go
Yeah.
in, like the architect. We're locked in only for phase 1. That's the only thing we release them on. If we get released, then we can go to phase 2 and we can release them to start work with that. We're not guaranteeing them that their entire fee all the way throughout. So it's piecemeal, so we go phase by phase by phase.
That answers your question, Donna?
Based
Yes?
on-
Yeah.
Andrea, did you have a thought?
I did. Good tell. I'm wondering, Dwight, what contingency costs are, and is there a potential to not have to pay them? I don't know. I don't know what, like, contingency is a word to me that means something, but I don't know what they mean in this context. Are they a fixed cost, or is it only if something, is it like buffered in if
A
some,
contingency, anything, when you work in an old building, okay, your contingency is, on a normal new building, is 8 to 10%. That's just a contingency for unforeseen conditions,
okay, so it's a
whatever.
buffer, kind of.
Right, but then in an older building, the contingency is usually a lot higher. Sometimes it's higher because when you're working in an existing building, you open walls, you don't know what you're gonna find.
Sure.
You don't, and there's gonna be a lot of asbestos, abatement, and everything else in there too, so it's an older
So
building.
you always budget for
So you always
contingency.
budget.
big
Right, you
projects.
have to make sure.
You have to,
Maybe more.
you have to, it's best practice, you can't not do it.
And then just to clarify the point you made, Susan, so you'd mentioned, Dwight, that at some point in future phases, people who are using the center building or organizations will need to temporarily relocate. Those costs associated with that are not reflected in this,
Are in
but
the
are
41
in.
million.
It
We
is.
are in the 41
They
million.
are, okay.
Because what we have to do is we have phasing, so as we phase one, we do one phase, we have to maybe move PD to somewhere so they can they can continue to operate, whatever. And then when that space is done, then we have to move them back in, and then we have to then move somebody else to renovate.
You can't very well close down the police.
No, I
department.
understand, I just,
Or even,
Wasn't-
our intent is to keep the building operational,
Right.
everything going all the time. We're
Which
not
is
shutting
easy to do,
anybody
which is
100%.
not easy to do, I get that.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
I think we all get that, okay.
thank you.
Okay. Tony, did you want to add anything to that, or
No, I think that was,
keep going?
okay. So those are the two capital projects under the selectmen's budget. The next one is the operating,
Right.
for the support of selectmen. And, so this is, because we're in sort of a time of transition, this is really, I just put together a sort of a roll forward last year. And I think Nika has to, review that, and we're hopeful to have more information and more suggestions when the selectmen review the budget in like the end of February.
Okay, so we don't have to spend time with this.
Actually,
Right?
just a little bit. I
Oh,
thought it would be worth mentioning that what Tony's referring to are different things like, I'd really like to see us take advantage of the skills of a town planner for a lot of the projects and a lot of the future visions that we hope to accomplish. So we're trying to fit that into the budget. We have some monies that have been, or even in this budget, this current year budget that we're hopeful to utilize. But that's one of the reasons, until we determine specifically if we're going to get somebody part-time, or if we're going to hire a firm to do that type of thing, those numbers are in flux. Additionally, the Woodbridge Town News just went full digital, so there is really no hard copy news media going to people at all. So, at all.
I didn't know that.
Right, so,
That's sad.
yeah, so they're full digital, no more newspaper being mailed, so as a result, my sense is that we need to consider possibly bringing our newsletter back or something, because there are a lot of our residents who aren't necessarily on the computer all the time.
We're
So,
trying to save money,
so,
because we have a Woodbridge Town News.
exactly, so,
That's a shame.
yeah, so that's a new development. Their first issue, I think, is coming out today, as a matter of fact, their first full digital issue, but again, that's something that's there.
it's a big deal.
Also looking at been talking to a few people on our board and on our commission, actually, the Sustainability Commission, with regard to composting of food waste, and seeing if we can do some sort of a program in town along those lines, and we need to kind of assess exactly what those costs are gonna be. Obviously, looking for them to be offset by what we would save in terms of doing that type of thing. I'd like to start a very formal program with property owners and business owners in our business district, where we get together and identify exactly what potentials there are from their property, from particularly vacant properties and things of that nature. And I think all of you are aware of that we're changing town council. So one of the numbers on here, for example, is 95,000, where there used to be where we might have budgeted less in the past. Couple of reasons for that. Obviously, there's a couple of lawsuits out there that will probably increase our charges. We're negotiating to keep the retainer portion of the legal fees where they are. We have been, and so far, folks have been receptive about that. I have more or less decided on a firm that I'll ask the board to approve at our meeting on the 14th. But the rates, the hourly rates are all bit higher than what Jerry had been doing. He hasn't raised his rates on us for quite some time. So it's just going to be more for hourly type activities that they have. So we've increased the budget a little bit from that perspective.
So that is reflected in what we're seeing?
Some
or
of it
like
is
an
reflected,
estimate?
Tony took a stab, Tony's taken a stab at that, and we're trying to.
But you're still tweaking is what
We're
it
still
sounds like.
tweaking, we're still, exactly.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, we're still tweaking it, exactly, so. Those are some of the things going on, I just thought you should at least be aware of why we're playing with it. We'll make sure we have that ready before we get together as a board from a selectman standpoint to make sure we have the details.
Any questions?
I have a small question about the role of the town planner and how that might help various projects with construction management. Will they all work together? Will the town planner then coordinate construction management companies, or does that help us save a little bit managing these projects, or was that to be determined?
It is to be determined to some degree, but initially, from our perspective, the value we see is if they can just simply coordinate and more importantly, start to plan, to actually to consider everything that the town is doing and consider everything that the town can do based on what we have available to us and see what direction we want. But initially, Maria, the immediate value we see is just somebody who can oversee on a regular basis, that it's not Tony or me or one of the other, Dwight or the building.
Or ad hoc, or,
Right,
right,
exactly,
because it's just.
exactly.
yeah.
Somebody who's looking at all of the
Yeah.
projects collectively and identifying any synergy, any economies of scale, anything that can save us money, anything along those lines. So we really need to define, because we haven't had one for so long, exactly what they can do and figure out what our best option would be. One of the things that we've been finding out is that town planning or civil engineers are in high demand, are paid a lot because they are in high demand and very scarce. It's very hard to find them right now. It's not something that you go to college for anymore, at least not in Connecticut. Most of the folks who are doing anything along those lines are going to Massachusetts and other places where they end up staying and working. So, just a little footnote as to what we're finding so far.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Just along those lines, is there a precedent for town planners writing the plan of conservation and development?
Is there,
Is there a precedent for that? Is that something town planners
generally
maybe can
speaking, for
do?
the most part, in our past and in the past of most of the towns that I've talked to, you hire a consultant
Oh,
specifically for that.
even if you have the town planner?
Correct.
Okay.
Even with the town planner, you would still hire a consultant who's specific to that task.
Thank you.
There's an RFP out right now for that.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's just going, I think it just went out today.
Yeah,
Exciting stuff.
yeah, it just went out today. We've already got a couple questions.
On the POC?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
The more I get, the better.
Good question. All right, any other thoughts? Thank you for that, it's very helpful. Now are we on information systems?
Information systems.
Okay.
Information systems has a small capital budget mainly relating to the payments for the renovation of our police network, which is about $48,000 a year and it has 2.5 years remaining. There is some planning here for possible renovations to the town network, although there's nothing right now that we feel we need to do. And finally, there's a capital budget request for some improved town Wi-Fi capability. We do have Wi-Fi in several spots, in the gym, here, Public Works, and there's a few that do not have Wi-Fi, and there's a few that are getting old, so this is just sort of a planning item that we may need in a few years.
Okay. Questions about information systems? No. Okay. Board of Finance.
So the information systems has an operating budget.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. Go ahead.
Information systems has, houses the IT charges for a number of things. First is the data processing line is for our outside consultant, which we share with the police department. We have a similar line, and we share that with the police department. We use the same firm, and we have a lot of efficiencies built into that. Another major item in there is the software maintenance line. That is for all of our charges for our software packages, a lot of which are in the cloud. That includes tax collector, tax assessor, financial package, which is Munis. There's a list actually in the budget document. You can see all the various programs that we use, multi-factor authentication, antivirus, budgeting program that you're looking at, and various other items on there. So those are our charges for that. We have also here, and so those tend to go up because for any of you that deal with software packages, you know, once you're involved in the software system, you get increases every year.
And you have to have it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not as if you really have
And
a choice.
a lot of them, when we ask about the increases, a lot of them have the same message, which is increased cybersecurity costs are driving a lot of the increases in a lot of our packages. So software upgrades is mainly for our charges related to we have Microsoft 365, and we have email security for our employees. And so that's within that line. That's a similar type of thing to the software packages. And then finally, our communications, there's two more here. That's where all our internet charges are. We're currently in the process of reorganizing a lot of this and trying to get some efficiencies here. We've had some upgrades to the Connecticut Education Network, CEN, which we are just signing on to. So that'll help to increase the bandwidth for our fiber and reduce some of our cable connections, because we'll have a more robust fiber connection in town. It's, I believe in a few months, it's going to be up to 1 gigabyte of service, and then 10 gigabytes in a few years. So that's up Connecticut. They're using ARP money to roll it out to towns. So we should have access to that in about 4 months. And so we're hoping to eliminate a lot of our cable connections. And, so anyway, we should hopefully save money there. And then lastly is our computer replacement plan, where we try to replace them a little at a time throughout the town.
And the efficiencies that you've been building in, like the last couple of years, have been working satisfactorily. Nobody's complaining about it.
Right. Particularly with cybersecurity, we've
Right.
done a lot of work in the last few years to, it's a never-ending struggle, frankly. As I'm sure you all know. And so we're trying to stay ahead of the curve with that. And lately, the COG has been spearheading a lot of sort of regional approach to cybersecurity for a lot of municipalities, which we're taking advantage of, with both police, fire, and the town. And so we're very thankful for that, using grant money to roll out new projects, a lot of new initiatives. So
Does the town carry cybersecurity insurance?
we do.
You do.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Well, I know that right, I mean, I just didn't remember.
They're requiring, a lot of the requirements are increasing in order to keep the insurance.
Right. You have to
You have
have
to have-
X level of so-and-so
Correct.
in order to,
Right.
for the insurance to be effective.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, yeah, no, I got it.
Tony, is town staff issued cell phones?
Only select few, only the employees that are on call. So if you're like building maintenance or police or animal control, people that are like called in the middle of the night for something, they'll get a cell phone.
Okay.
Fire department, yeah,
Thank you.
but not the rest of the town.
Okay, any other questions? Now we're on Board of Finance.
Okay. Board of Finance has a few major items. One is the audit, which you just heard from. This is our portion of the audit. We also share the audit charges with the Board of Education, and they have their portion in their budget. And then the other major item here is contingency, which we were just talking about, contingency for unplanned expenses. This is a little higher than usual because we have one contract that's still not negotiated, which is the police contract. So because we are unsure of what those charges will be, we have a contingency for those increases. So there are no salary adjustments in police for the uniformed officers in their budget. with that. It's pretty big, straightforward budget.
The Board of Finance has no capital.
No capital for Board of
So,
Finance.
Any questions for Tony on Board of Finance? Okay. Can we move to employee benefits?
Country Club Woodbridge, is it?
Where did you see that?
It was added, it's
Oh,
on the agenda.
But I have board.
Oh,
employee
benefits first, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Employee benefits is an area where we're constantly getting new information. So a lot of these budgets are not set yet. And but I'll go through them, I'm happy to go through them. The FICA and Medicare obviously are the matches for our salaries. And so to the extent there's a new position request, as there is one in police and one in human services, that impacts a lot of lines in this department, including FICA and Medicare, that's one. So that's the accountant's responsibility, the employer responsibility for those items. Retirement, we are part of the CMERS, which is Connecticut Municipal Employees Retirement System. That's it's essentially a retirement system run by the state of Connecticut. And a lot of municipalities are members. We've been members since the 50s, it's been a long time. And essentially, it's a defined benefit pension, which means when you retire, you get a benefit each month based on how many years you were an employee. And so they just did some restructuring in this to save us some money. The match for this year is 15% for, that's an increase in 17% for our town, 21 to 23% for police. I'm hoping that will be reduced, and we're waiting to hear from the treasurer on that. The controller rather. The controller's office is the one that runs this program. And so we're waiting to hear from their office on what the match will be for next year, and so that will adjust this line.
So employee benefits is still a fluid situation.
It's fluid, right?
All right.
And healthcare is the same. We're currently in, the Board of Ed mentioned, we're having some good news on healthcare, so this should definitely be reduced as well. We're just waiting to hear back from, we're out to bid for that.
Right.
So
Okay.
we're going to hear the bid results from different carriers to see where our healthcare comes in, but we've got some competition this year amongst several of the carriers, so that's good news for us.
Yeah.
Tony, can I ask a quick question about the health insurance? We have a different line for retiree health insurance.
Right.
Is that's,
So
once people retire?
You're right, so we have retiree healthcare for our employees, and once they retire, and it depends on when you were hired, is depending on if you get healthcare in retirement. So
So that's
when I
sunset
first,
a while
before
back.
I got here, it was just, I think, 10 years, I think, and then you got healthcare 5 years, or something like that. When I started, it was 25 years, so you have to be here 25 years to get healthcare. In 2016 and 2017, we eliminated healthcare in retirement. So,
For new hires.
for new hires. So anyone hired after that date no longer gets healthcare in retirement. So,
Is it something employees could opt to buy into? I know that's how the state manages it.
Cannot, no.
Okay.
so if you were hired after a certain date, it's a little different for police than it is for town and for non-union, for union, but generally around 2017, you were not, if you were hired after that date, you were not eligible for healthcare in retirement. So this is essentially connected to the OPEB contribution. And eventually, if that doesn't change, this will be eliminated, and the OPEB contribution, the idea is then use the OPEB fund to fund the retirees, so that the town budget doesn't have to fund it.
So are there still people that will qualify for this and have not yet retired?
Yes.
Or- Okay,
Yeah.
so we're still moving
We're
people
still
into
moving,
that line?
correct, we're not adding new people, but we're still moving employees that are currently here into
Into
retirement.
that.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll get to the point where
It's just
no
have to taper
zero
off.
is out.
Right.
Other questions on that?
The other item I'll just mention is one that's historically difficult for towns to get coverage for, and that's workers' compensation, the last line. particularly with some of our higher risk occupations, like police, volunteer fire in particular, and public works are the three that are the highest per charges.
Okay. Okay. Country Club of Woodbridge.
Country Club of Woodbridge, there are two items in the capital budget here. And these are ones that we like the capital budget to be a snapshot of potential capital liabilities that the town has or could have in the future. One is the clubhouse, and you'll see the demolition of the clubhouse is at some point going to be a reality.
Yeah.
If you've driven by it.
I drove by it yesterday.
So,
Oh my God.
it's
It may demolish itself.
it's important to keep that on this plan because that's a real possibility that's gonna have to be addressed at some point in the near future. The second is environmental remediation, which is not quite as immediate, but I'd like to just keep that on there because eventually, depending on the use of the property, if there's no use,
Right.
if there's a certain type of use, there's a lot of factors involved in that, so at the moment, that's not an immediate need, but I was like to keep it on there.
We are looking into a brownfield grant specifically to determine exactly what's required, what would be required. Grant was passed for somebody to come in and assess exactly what's needed from a remediation standpoint. So that way, if we do anything at the country club, or I should say, when we do something with the country club, it'll be known as to
It'll be a
what's
known
entailed.
factor, you'll have it there, yeah, that sounds smart.
This information was generated from when we had our phase 1, 2, and 3 done of the property, which was a while back, I'd say 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was my question. Do you think this 1 million estimate for the demolition of the clubhouse is still accurate?
I'm not sure, it depends on the environmental part.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure what that building has in terms of asbestos or, I don't know.
It's not.
It's mold.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
good, it's probably.
All mold.
Yeah, so it could be, but I'm not sure.
Is this duplicative of what Warren presented to us at the last meeting about what it would cost to take it down to a slab?
No, those were all the outbuildings.
Just the outbuildings?
Yeah, this is for just the
Okay.
clubhouse. Because the town could do all the outbuildings, the clubhouse is too big, we need someone to do
Although
that
if
for
we
us.
all got there and just pushed, I think it might not go over, you know.
But it could be low, to answer your question, yeah, that could be low.
Yeah,
This could be, low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had received an estimate about 5-6 years ago, it
I
was
remember that.
750,000 at that time, but that was a qualifier that, no, with the environmental, not
No
sure.
environmental.
Right, no environmental costs, right.
I seem to
Pre-COVID price, 6-7.
Right, right.
recall that was also sort of a limited cleanup job, they weren't gonna leave it pristine.
Right.
But Anyway,
Right.
okay. Anything else on the
I
country club?
guess I have a question. If we were to expedite the demolition and or prioritize it, do you, I don't even know if you're the person to direct this to, but if, depending on what the town wants to do with the property, do you think that would help us generate options, or would?
Well, so, there also, one other option is if someone else does the demolition.
Yeah, that's the context in which I'm asking this question, like whether.
Because someone else may have, be able to do it, more efficiently.
As part of bringing their equipment in, it might be significantly less for someone else to do it, so
Right.
someone
Right,
else.
that's a
It almost
possibility,
behooves
definitely.
us to.
To explore.
Explore
that.
options.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay. You wanna talk about debt service?
Sure. So in your package, we have our actual projected debt service. I'd like to go through that, because I think that's sort of a place, it's an Excel spreadsheet, I think you guys see it here.
Yep.
So basically what it has is our existing town bonds on the left, and the years of which the payments are due across the top. And you'll note, I put just so you can see where this year is, it's, our payment this year in the budget is a little over $2 million in interest and principal costs for the public works facility, a refinance that we had done back in 2015, and feature renovation, with which there were 2 issuances, radios upgrade, and then purchase of the Woodbridge Country Club. And so you can see the payments left on each of those. And the Woodbridge Country Club purchase, which was 2021, is when we issued bonds. We had notes up until then. So that's why it says 2021, but really we purchased it in 2009. But we can roll it into bonds until 2021. And I also put in there the estimate for the Beecher roof and grounds, so you can see roughly how much that will cost each year. But as you'll notice, our debt service drops in the 2025 budget because the refinance from 2015 is paid off. Basically, that was from the Beecher roof from 03, and 09 was the firehouse. So now the firehouse will be paid off. It's actually paid off already because we made the principal payment in this year. So no more money owed on that. And interestingly enough, Amity's overlapping debt service, which is also in the middle of the page, is very low, which used to be, you'll see it drops from 1.5 million to 1.2 million, and down to a very small amount. I discussed this with the finance director, and they don't have any immediate plans to borrow any money from everybody.
The other day.
And they said, no.
They're doing that capital non-recurring.
Right, so they don't have any debt issuances that they're aware of. At least I didn't hear.
Right, but they're also not spreading the cost of those projects over multiple years. And so when our amount for enrollment is high, our amount to pay for capital is also high. So I'm not sure exactly what the impact is. I have a feeling Woodbridge is getting a higher impact this way than if they bonded projects like roofs. And they do Woodbridge. So we could ask.
I can say here, our debt services decreases significantly as a percentage of our budget, and so we clearly are doing very well there.
Except for when we do the center building.
Well, I guess my point
But
is
this is great, this is
there's some
beautiful
room
to see.
here for, usually you're supposed to, 10% is usually a rule of thumb for your debt service and capital related expenses, and if we're at say $50 million, that would be $5 million. And you can see that's much lower, so we're probably at 5%.
Tony, is the plan to bundle like the Beecher roof and the center renovations together when we go to bond these things, or is the timing not gonna?
So we're
Play out.
center renovation and the Beecher roof timing won't work. Ideally, we'd like to do that because then we only pay the issuance costs once, right? But I'm not sure the center building will be ready at the same time as the roof. We don't even have an approval yet for that.
Right.
So the roof is approved. My guess is, depending on, the roof is an easy one. We could probably figure out that one and borrow it right away. The question of the grounds, and I'm not sure, because it seems to be a little more nebulous in terms of how much it's gonna cost, when it's gonna be paid, how it's gonna be paid. So we sort of have to figure that out.
Okay, any other thoughts on debt service? This is really helpful, I think, because
It is.
we get a big picture from where the direction it's going.
So it's going in a positive direction.
Right. On the other hand, we talk about revenue.
Revenues is that last one, right? Okay, I have a handout for this. There you go. There's 3 pages in each. I'll show you some extra.
They're collated but not stapled.
Right.
Take 3 pages.
So I have 3 items here. The first are our revenue estimates for the 24-25 fiscal year. The second is our tax calculations and grand list information. And finally, the top 10 taxpayers, which I thought you'd find interesting. So the first we can go over is the revenue estimates. So that's this page here.
Just quickly, is someone missing a page, because we have a rogue miscellaneous on page?
No.
Okay.
So these are our non-tax related revenues that you've probably heard throughout the budget presentation. And so there's a snapshot of all of it in one place. And the first section, so these are, it gives you 3 years of actuals. Then you have the budget for the current year and the department request or estimate for the following year, for next year. The first is non-tax revenues in the tax office. Basically, that's prior property tax, late property taxes, and delinquent interest that we collect each year. It usually is right between $250,000 and $300,000 each year. It's pretty consistent. The second section in this one is basically a roll forward from last year because the governor has not released his budget. But this is for intergovernmental revenues. And a lot of these we get from the governor's budget, including the education cost sharing, the motor vehicle MSRA, that's our reimbursement for the motor vehicle. Mill rate being fixed at 32.46. Special education excess cost grant, that one we don't have yet from the Board of Education, so I just carried last year's, but I will get that from the business office hopefully in the next week or so. The pilot grants will come from the state. Town Road Aid is another state formulary grant that we get for paving. So that combined with the $65,000 from LoSiP is what we get in grant money for paving. This is a formulary grant, which means that it's done by state statute, and it's a formula, and then everyone gets a certain amount, and that's why it's recorded here. The LoSiP one, you actually have to apply for and apply it towards that, which is why we use it for paving and capital budget. Another one here is the municipal stabilization grant. That's $120,000. That's another formulary grant. And sometimes we come out with new ones, and sometimes we restructure all this. And we don't usually find out a lot of these until April or sometimes May. So depending on the year, some years are stable and are easy to predict. Other years are not. And so we'll stay through this.
Right.
And of course, the state just redid how they're doing the excess cost grants as well.
Oh, did they? Yeah. So.
But I don't think that's finalized either, so.
Right, right. So generally then, usually we sort of err conservatively on that if we're not sure. But I can discuss that with Donna. Next is department charges. These are the department charges that these are what we charge for departments. You'll see conveyance taxes and town clerk fees are two larger ones. We have our reimbursement from Andy for our school resource officer. It's $120,000. Building permits, that's an estimate from the building official. It's at $535,000. It's mainly driven by the project on Bradley Road. Recreation fees, there's an increase from John Adamovich in rec commission, which was, I think, passed out.
Yes,
tonight.
it was.
Yeah. So that's reflected in the increase from 171 to 218 from the rec department. So even though their expenses go up, you'll see the revenues also go up. So in total, there's probably not much of a change in that. And then some rental fees that we get, or we see the center rental. That's mostly from the child center. Well, pretty much all from the child center. So those are our department charges. Interest income, I'm sort of kind of monitoring. That's sort of hard one to predict. We generally are limited to short-term and stable investments. Nothing. That's usually risky, so I keep an eye on that, and I'll refine that as we go further in the budget process. In other revenues, I guess the main item here is the fund balance appropriation. So the way I like to describe this, and you see it's $800,000. That's a budget revenue item that we'll never collect. because it's our money. So it's essentially a plug, a revenue that you're not gonna collect, but it helps to balance the budget, if that makes sense. So that's how we record our contribution, our fund balance appropriation each year. And so you'll see it helps to balance the budget, but obviously we're not gonna collect money from ourselves, so it'll just come out off the fund balance at the end of the year. So that's different from contingency, which is an expenditure appropriation, a fund for unknown expenditures. So this is a fund changed, once in a while. This used to be $400,000 and it was raised to $800,000 in acknowledgement of the fact that primarily because Amity changed the way they return surplus funds. So they used to send it to us, which you'll see in there says Amity surplus funds. That's when they used to send us the money. Now they lower their what we have to pay them in expenditures. They just lower their
Just offset.
bill. Yeah.
Tony, I have a quick question about the fund balance appropriation. The previous years are not shown, and you just have the current fiscal.
Right, because it's just a budget item. It's not an actual.
Yeah, so it sort of drops off. as
Right,
it gets
because we
past
never
the-
actually collect it because it's just a budget.
But it's one of those previous years that it had been roughly half, but has been adjusted because we haven't.
Correct, right. If you look at the budget numbers from those 3 years,
Yeah.
you'll see it was 400,000.
Right.
And
So-
that's a number you could discuss through the process. You heard Scott mention our percent, our fund balance as a percent of our expenditures is about 14%. It's not the highest in of towns like us, but it's certainly not the lowest. That's more of a policy question as much as it is a financial one.
I already wrote it down for us to talk about it.
Okay.
I'll also mention to the Board of Selectmen, in regard to the department charges, the pool continues to be a challenge, and that's a discussion we're gonna have in regards to that when we talk about the budget, so I just wanna bring attention to that.
Where do you see this pool?
That's under the
Oh,
department
pool
charges.
rental,
Mhm.
the pool rental, okay,
For
thank
the,
you.
that's the income.
Can I just ask one last question on that, the Amity surplus, because of the way they've changed it? They're still taking more from the fund balance, but we should probably, not this coming year, but maybe the next year, there's going to continue to not be any surplus, which seems to be.
Right.
We need to adjust that.
You could possibly adjust it, yes, that's correct.
But we're not taking from the fund balance, we're accounting for the.
We doubled it because of Amity.
But I just wanna make sure that we all understand that.
Right.
Yeah, no, we'll probably have to undouble it
Yeah.
because of Amity.
You want to just, we keep a fund balance for many reasons, unforeseen expenditures, for, there's a whole list of reasons why you would keep a healthy fund balance. Another one is I'm gonna discuss in about a couple minutes. That's the
Before
grand
you,
list.
yeah, but before you move on, I think I know the answer to this. All the formulary, intergovernmental dollars that come in, that's based on population, correct?
That depends.
Oh, it does depend, okay, all right.
So like, ECS, for instance.
Yeah.
It's not solely population, there's a lot of economic factors.
Oh, okay. I think I knew that, I just couldn't remember exactly what all the
Right,
factors
exactly,
were.
right, yeah.
Okay.
There's have you ever seen the formula for ECS? It's like 30 lines.
I withdraw my question.
And then,
Yeah, play with it all the
I
time.
play with it all the time.
It's not really a formula at all.
Never mind, never mind.
Yeah.
Tony, can you speak to the increase in zoning permits, the revenue generated from zoning? Is that Toll Brothers or is that due to our new TP&Z regs?
From the, which one?
I see zoning permits having gone up from 5 to 6 actual 100 to 2,500 revenue.
Zoning permits, thank you.
Yeah, I see. I think that's just reflective of what Chris feels her permit revenue will be in the next year.
Okay,
And
but we don't know
I'm not
why.
sure specifically why,
Okay.
no.
Interesting.
Tony, what's tuition revenue on the other revenue section?
Tuition revenue is revenue that the Beecher School received for students that do not live in town who pay tuition to go to the school.
So we don't budget for that, we just account for it.
Right, and in this particular instance, they're so large because it's money from payment for open choice.
Yeah.
That's what that is. If it comes in after the fiscal year ends, then the school can't record it. In this particular instance, it came in after the fiscal year.
The balance layer
Right,
backwards.
correct, yeah. So
There
that
it
we
is.
accepted it as a revenue. And what we did was we had to, we did a appropriation request to give back to the school. But we had to collect the revenue because it was after the fiscal year.
All right, you wanna talk about?
And one last one is police private duty at the end.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that's, essentially, we charge a user fee when you see someone using private duty, we charge a user fee to cover our expenses related to police overtime, which is essentially the FICA, Medicare, the retirement cost, the vehicle cost, the, all kinds of, whatever costs we have related to the private duty, we charge, and that's what that is.
So when the power company is fixing a power line and the cop is waving you on, is that private duty?
Yes.
It is,
If it's,
yeah.
if it's a
Yeah.
fallen tree from a storm, not so much. If it's a work that
Oh,
they're
because
doing.
we own the tree.
Right, because it's a natural.
They don't pay for storms.
They don't pay for.
They don't pay the stuff, but I'm saying if they're doing
But if
utility
they're doing
work
utility work
and they're
or,
waving you on. yeah,
Right.
okay. All right. I was wondering about that. Okay.
so, the next sheet is the auxiliary calculation sheet. And, just to orient you, to this, the, first set of expenditures are essentially all the departments, they're just grouped by major category. It's the same sheet that I handed out the other night. And then, so you take the $60 million in requests, 60,497,372. You subtract the 5,795,119, which is this sheet that we just went over. And you get the amount you need to raise in taxes in order to balance the budget. So, then the next is the grand list. And, so you'll see that Marcia has completed the grand list. She essentially completes the real estate, personal property, and the motor vehicle, and the water company pilot. And she presents all those, which she did yesterday. And then we have to estimate the motor vehicle supplement. Those are for cars that are expire after the start of the year. And so you'll see that the grand list, the net adjusted grand list actually goes down, and that's primarily because we didn't have a large increase in real estate, and we had decreases of 2.7 and 3.7% in motor vehicle and personal property. You can see there, motor vehicle lost $4 million, pretty much. That was a big drop. And now it has less of an impact because the mill rate is lower, but still, it's a large drop. And the real estate went from 382 to 386, it's $3.7 million. If you look at the top 10 taxpayers, 3/4 of the way down the list, you'll see Toll Northeast at 2.8. So 2.8 of the $3.7 million in the increase in the real estate grand list is from that project. Otherwise, we would have had pretty much a flat real estate. So then you move further down, and once we get those numbers, we have to adjust the grand list for uncollected taxes, which you'll see there. Get that figure for you, so that is. We do a 99.5% tax collection rate, which is pretty much historically our average.
I have a question. Up at the top, that, we're talking, it says 23, 24, but that's really supposed to be 24.
Oh, yeah, that's correct, yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct.
you were trying to confuse me, I know.
I'm testing you, actually, that's a test.
Thanks, did I pass?
Wait, so are they all the columns?
The
Yeah, all the
columns
columns
are
you
off
should
by
use,
year.
yeah. All the columns are off by year. Yeah.
Thought you'd slip that one by.
Nice catch. That's a good catch.
Tony, do we have any flexibility or opportunity to adjust the RWA?
We do not.
That's,
That's, it's the value of it's a pilot essentially that they pay to us based on the assessment of their properties.
And how often is that reassessed?
I'm not sure, you can ask Marcia, she does that every year. I can find out
So
for
what are
you.
you looking for here?
So, I wanted to tell you the, uncollected tax amount. It is about, $250,000. And then you have, the firefighter abatement. So you'll see that goes up because, that was adjusted a few months back. So, that goes from about $15,000 to about $40,000 a year. And then finally, the elderly tax stabilization, which is, $150,000. That's basically, essentially, roughly what we use each year. It increased a little bit this year, but that's essentially how much that program uses, so you have to adjust it to the grand list for those programs. So you have a 8.41% increase in the mill rate of real estate, which is 48.87, and motor vehicles flat at 32.46. So those are the requests.
Any questions? We have a lot of work to do.
You have some work to do.
Yeah. That's what it looks like, we have a lot of work to do.
Right.
Keeping in mind that a lot of the numbers are still very fluid.
Right, but
And
still you can see the challenge you have
it's
ahead of
the
you.
order of magnitude that we're looking at. Okay, no, any questions? Thoughts, concerns?
John, is there a way to calculate, for every like percentage of, or every point of mill rate or every half a point of mill rate, how much revenue that is? Like if you went from like,
Yeah.
30 to 31, what is that 1 point jump in the, in a mill rate? What
So-
would that equate to?
It says it on the bottom of the sheet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. It says for
Oh,
every
it does,
one
sorry.
mil of real estate personal, see there?
Okay.
So for every 1 mil, it's $1 million, over $1 million.
Keeping in mind that the reval is it this year?
Yeah.
It's this year.
October.
October. So this is all gonna, I mean, for our purposes, these are the numbers we have to work with.
Right.
But going forward, it's gonna be a very different paradigm that we're looking at, so.
But that will hit us next year.
That's gonna hit us
Next year's budget.
Marcia will be
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
on the February one
Yeah,
next year.
exactly. No, it's going to be next year.
Now until then.
But for those of us
Yeah.
who do this, we don't look at just what's in front of us, we look ahead to see what that looks like, because that's what we're all doing here.
Tony, for those who have not necessarily been exposed to this before, I know that the capital budget portion of the budget itself is an area where if you impact, it has a greater impact than some of the other line items, only because, it could be millions.
You'll see it's the last line, it says transferred out and other financing uses, that's the capital budget. So you'll see it goes from $1.3 million as adopted to 3.3.
And where are you seeing this?
If you look on the mill rate summary sheet, where I have the grand list on it, look at the expenditures.
Oh, thank
See
you.
these transfers out and other financing uses, that's a capital budget. So, you'll see it goes from 1.3 to 3.3. So,
So Johnny, that's.
so if you have $4 million in an increase in the amount to raise in taxes, 2 of it is the capital budget.
That's the pay-as-you-go.
Pay-as-you-go portion,
And
right?
the finances unbonded, just like the cost to carry the debt.
Nope, just the pay-as-you-go,
Cost to carry the debt is an operating.
right, it's an operating, yeah.
So that's just.
Yeah.
All right.
I say that just that way, so if you're looking at it, you're looking for things, it's an area to look at.
We have our work cut out for it, cut out for us, I think, folks. Any other questions or thoughts? All right,
Thank you.
we're done.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Board of Finance, our next regular meeting is